All right, and there we go. This is Good Morning Kenya. It gets to continue. My name is Vivian Ndegwa, and today, as I had mentioned at the very beginning of Good Morning Kenya, I'd mentioned that on Family Tech we'll be talking about dysfunctional families. And to be specific, we will be looking at why do we now have more single parenthood households, because clearly it is on the rise. According to statistics, it shows that single parent households, particularly those headed by women, are on the rise, you know, compared to the 2000. If you look at the difference between the 2009 census and the 2019 census, the numbers have clearly gone up. In 2009, we had 25% of households in Kenya being headed by single parents, and then in 2019, the numbers had gone up, and we had 38% of single parent households existing in Kenya. And just to go further with the statistics, there was another statistic showing that the number of households led by women in urban areas had increased, and it had gone up to 31%. So 31% of households in urban areas are led by women, and this was a study done in the year 2022. So, I mean, it's been how many years now? 2022, 23, 24, 25. This is the third year. I'm sure that number has even gone way higher. So it's about time we get to talk about this so that we get to find out where exactly the issue is and what are the dynamics, you know, when we try to look at single parent households. What are the dynamics? Is there a difference between single parent households whereby the man is the only parent, or you know, when the woman is the only parent? We'll just try to look at all of that. And I am more than pleased because I won't be alone speaking about this. Of course, I can't speak here alone. I have a panelist with me, and I'll begin with my immediate right. He's not new to you. That is Duncan Juma. Duncan Juma is a life coach. Welcome to the program, Duncan. It's a pleasure to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you so much.
All right, and then we also have right next to Duncan, we have Monica Gathura. Monica Gathura is a family and marriage therapist. Welcome to the program. All right, and then right next to Monica, we have Robert Muhia, and Robert Muhia is a communication specialist. And these are the people who, welcome to the program, Muhia.
Thank you.
And these are the people who will be joining me or will be aiding this conversation, that is dysfunctional families and why we have more single parenthood households. Let us just begin with why you think, or what exactly has contributed to this rise. Beginning with, let me start with the lady. Ladies first.
Okay. Thank you very much. I say hi to you all. Thank you for being here. It's been a dream valid. I've been deciding to be here to talk about such issues that are affecting our society. My name is Monica Gathura. I'm a family and a marriage therapist, as you have heard. And today we are discussing the causes or the rise on the single parenthood. But I think most importantly, we should start by asking ourselves, what is a dysfunctional family? What are the characteristics of a dysfunctional family? And you understand that most of us could be coming from such families, knowingly or unknowingly. And I would start by saying that a dysfunctional family is a family characterized by a lot of disorganization, where you find that people do not respect other people's boundaries, where people's feelings are not validated, and you find that there is a lot of abuse, there is addiction in such families, and this could be rendering to the single parenthood that we are having currently in the nation or in the world at large.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What's your take on that, Juma?
I think that you asked the question why there's a rise in dysfunctional or single parent families. Number one, of course, the bias is that there are more women now who sort of are more of the single parents. But of course, globally speaking, there are more women in the world than men. So already there's a demographic issue right there to bring in balance. But also when you talk about the empowering of the girl child, because initially traditionally the man was the provider. Then all of a sudden we've had a lot of women empowerment journeys. And so when you evaluate your equation and realize that maybe I can do what that man can do, there's a higher chance to jump out and say, I can actually raise this kid on my own. Because initially, if you listen to our parents and all that, many stuck in maybe even disrespectful or environments that you would think they shouldn't have stayed, but because they had nowhere to go, they couldn't run back to their homes because no one would accommodate them and all that. So right now, because of the empowerment of the girl child and the women, they've reached a place where their tolerance levels for maybe things that are treated to them have gone lower, and it's because also they are empowered to do certain things on their own, and because of that, then there's that rise of single parents, among many other factors again.
Yeah. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Robert. So what exactly do you think is bringing this change or this rise in single parenthood households?
I think single parenthood is characterized by abuse and neglect and a lot of things that didn't function well in the previous family, maybe where you are raised as an individual. And this leads to things like trauma. So you find so many people nowadays are not able to cope with their trauma. And that leads to them maybe choosing to avoid having partners in their lives or just cutting off partners just because they are not able to handle the baggage that comes with it.
Yeah. All right. So you've given different reasons that you feel could have contributed to the rise of this, but then there's also a partner might just lose their partner, so then you have nothing to do. We have widows and widowers, and there's really nothing much one can do concerning that. So maybe what impact does this have? Let's look at the impact that it has on the children that are raised in these families. What impact would you say it has on the children?
Okay, are you looking at me?
Whoever wants to begin can start.
Yeah, I can just add that I think it's also agreed globally that men in our society are dying way before they are women. So that could also contribute. I think if you look at the life expectancy, the men is lower. But also, of course, largely because the men take riskier jobs. Think about careless driving and all that. We do that, and because of that also, that could contribute. But if you talked about the impact of single parenthood, I think what is lost many times in the narrative is the impact of that setting, and especially the interpretation from a lot of women who don't see the problem, because they see as them sorting out their disagreement with their man, but then miss out the impact it has on children. So when you look at heavily dysfunctional children, many times you will find that it's because there was a parent missing in the equation. There's someone who said, for example, that in the heart of a boy child, there's a hole the shape of a father. So many times, every man or boy child looks for an affirmation from a man who will say, you are the man. So the lady or the mother can do all they can do, and they mean well. But unless that is sorted, where there's a man who affirms this man to usher them into manhood, there's always that gap. And you find that now addiction, because of those gaps, the feeling of the insecurity, the emotional turmoil. And many times also you'll find that a good percentage of, because of the discomfort or the circumstances that may have led to the single parenthood, the pain is passed on to the kids. And so you find that people are bitter. There's a meme that was going around where people are saying, are you going to have a meeting with your cousins, or have you inherited the pain from your parents? You see that largely because then, and also maybe just to add to it again, ostracization by society, where if you're a single mother, there are even spaces you can't even comfortably sit with husbands of other people, discuss business, because then there's that feeling that you are a threat to society. And these are perceptions. You take our husband. In fact, you can be told things, and so you'll find that then they almost pick a lane that is almost solitary, away from society, and that also has its own level. When these boys or children also leave the nest, for lack of a better word, again, it comes with its own gaps as well. So the psychological turmoil that kids go through because of the setup they find themselves in, cannot be undersaid. When you find out drug addiction at an early age because of that exposure, then also parents in that setting are likely to do more to cover up for that gap. And so there's that a level of absenteeism that can actually impact also negatively on the children. Yeah.
All right, and before we get to hear from the family therapist on the same, maybe to you, Muhia, is the reality of, you know, the girl child being empowered now also a factor in all of this? Because some say that, yes, the girl child is being empowered, not that the boy child is being forgotten, but the boy child is not being taught on how to deal with this empowered woman, because they were used to maybe seeing their grandmothers or mothers back then being very, let me use the word submissive, not to say that nowadays women are not submissive, but nowadays women have a stand because, you know, I have my own money, I can take care of my kids, I can raise them without you. So if you bring me complications, I can very easily just decide, well, I am done with this. Could this also be the reason?
It could be a huge factor that women nowadays have become more empowered, of which it's a good thing that they are more empowered. Yeah. But there's that also narrative of there's always the values or the foundation that a relationship should be found on, especially if you're coming in together as a husband and a wife. So the moment you talk about a woman who's maybe more moneyed than the husband, it also brings a power struggle. You find that the woman would always want to be a bit dominant in the nature, and then the man is not able to submit or handle that. So yes, it's a factor, but I think mostly it narrows down to the way that the couple understand each other and the communication that happens in there. But still, we still have to go to the basics and the foundation of a relationship and the marriage. Yeah, those are the ones that matter the most. Yeah, and you know, maybe just to still get this from you, do you feel like the men in our generation are able to handle these empowered women? No, they are not. Yeah, they are not. I'll speak from a perspective of a millennial. Yeah, and this is something that I've been thinking and studying and asking people about it. Millennials, most of them were raised by very bitter mothers. They were raised by mothers who wanted things to be done in a different way. They wanted more freedom from their men. On the other side, they were raised by fathers who were very strict. Fathers who didn't have, like for sons, they didn't mentor them. So you find a millennial daughter was raised by a bitter mother who always demanded her to be stronger than man. She told that lady that you can do better than a man. You don't need a man in your life. You can do. She wanted to see the daughter getting the freedom that she would have wanted. Okay. And on the other side, the son was raised by a woman who always told her that you need to lower your guard. You need to be gentle on these women. You need to be kind. You know, you need to be laid back. And then they didn't have fathers to tell them that this is the way that you're supposed to control your house. They didn't have fathers who could communicate and explain why they did things the way that they did. Yeah. So that brought a huge factor because, to be honest, most of single parents right now, they're in that demographic of millennials. Yeah, they're in that age bracket of millennials. Yeah, so mostly those characteristics are attributed to that reason and that family setup. Okay. Yeah. You know, Monica, just from what Robert has said, he's raised something which is one of the impacts, you know, of being raised in a single parenthood household, whereby if it's the mom who's in charge, there's a way that she's speaking to the daughter, there's a way that she's speaking to the son. So maybe just to get from you, you know, what does this have? What does this, you know, bring, you know, forth when it comes to the children that are being raised in these families? What impact exactly can we speak about?
Thank you. Single parenting may have a lasting problems to the children. In that, children are born with inborn talents. They have inborn talents, and therefore it is during this early childhood that these talents need to be unfolded. And therefore, when the environment is not conducive, there might be some delays in the manifestation of the talents. Again, these children may carry their traumas to their later childhood. And the reason you are finding that if a child was raised in a single parenthood and the child could see what was happening when the father and the mother were fighting, when there was violence in the family, the child will grow up knowing that a father should be violent. The girl will grow knowing that the mother needs to be submissive to a point that even when the rights are violated, she should not ask. So most of them will opt to stay single and just carry on with their life. So you may find that we have the traumas that people are handling today, they carried them from their childhood. That is the lasting negative effects on children.
Yeah. There's something you had mentioned earlier, Duncan, where you were speaking about, one having a father figure. You may be raised by a single mom, yes, but I think it's important if you have father figures around you or a father figure around you. And if you're a lady, you've been raised by your dad, I'm sure you will need that mother figure around you. Just what's the importance of that, and what challenges may it bring forth later on?
Yeah, I think you say the right thing. I've been raised by a single mother, so I have an idea what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of respect for my mother, largely because there are things she did as a lady that should have been done by a man. Even things like topics like maybe how you're growing into a manhood and all that. She tried her best, but I think those are spaces that then someone else should have stepped in to maybe mold us. I pretty think I turned out right, but also maybe God heavily helped in some sense. But so many times in society, you would find that some of those gaps are supposed to have been filled by an uncle here. Mostly they say your only true relatives are your sister's children. By and large, they could be your only true relatives. The others, maybe there could be question marks. But so uncles are supposed to have stepped in and helped. But you see, everyone is busy. We live in a space where even families don't meet anymore. Think of families where a matriarch dies, and then there's no reason to go to the village anymore. Because the ties are very transactional. A lot of families will only meet on a WhatsApp group when there's a funeral contribution or a wedding in the family, then they disappear. So those gaps have very lasting, and sometimes they don't show up until you are into a relationship. Think of it, even in society, what happens is you finish school, then they say, we are waiting for you to bring a man home, or almost that the transition is very not smooth. And it's societal expectation on your part, yet you have your own questions in life, you have your own journey. And so many times those gaps where a daughter needs an affirmation from a man who will, in fact, they normally say many great women or wives have been great daughters to a father. There's a man who sort of, because it takes a man to introduce a lady into the world of a man. Because many times people, I don't know how to balance it, but the idea is there is need to have, whether they are mentors or people deliberately, but as we are structured right now, our relationships are heavily transactional. Think of a wise uncle in the village, but maybe they don't have money. When they speak in a family function, we think it's a nuisance, or they can't. Then you have another useless one who may not have any ideas, but they have money. Then they're always giving good advice or something. So there's that imbalance but we need to have then conversation around deliberately knowing that my daughters are visiting uncle so and so for purposes of this. But also in those dysfunctions, you find that also there are people who have been taken advantage of because of those gaps. Then you find an uncle who becomes irresponsible. Instead of them stepping up to the plate, they may be even abusing. Or, so these dysfunctions have all those ripple effects. And it becomes important to also deliberately then say, is there a way? I know churches have stepped in. Sometimes there are those mentorship spaces. But I still feel there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done, according to you. Remember, you can get to join into the conversation. You can call us live. The number is 0716-103-301. 0716-103-301. You can get to call in and ask your questions, or if you have a comment, you're free to also share with us. If we can continue with this, you know, they say that a father is a daughter's first love and a son's first hero. So I'm imagining a household where the lady or the girl or the boy hasn't been able to, you know, have that father figure in their lives. Just how does that impact their lives? Is there a direct impact? It's almost the same with what he was saying, but specifically, say for women, this will be for Robert to answer. Maybe in your dating life, you know, while you were dating and all of that, could you clearly tell that this one was raised, there was a dad in their home, and this one, there was no dad in their home, compared with maybe just the dynamics that were there?
Yeah.
Is it possible to pinpoint?
It is.
Oh, wow.
It is possible. And it is characterized by, I remember there was a time I was dating this lady. And, yeah, I won't. Yeah, I was dating this lady, and she came from a background where she didn't have a dad. And she was always intrigued by men and how we react to things. And her idea of men, she thought men are just violent people. She could tell me that every time a man can kill you anytime.
Wow.
You know, men are just animals. It's only that they are tamed by some things. But a man can kill you just anytime. And then at times you could find that she hits you because she doesn't understand. She feels like men are blocks. They don't feel pain.
Yeah.
They shouldn't react. So she had a lot of things going on in her mind that she couldn't understand about men. And I believe it also translates to boys, because I've also interacted with boys who've been raised by single mom. You find that they're always intrigued about how a man should behave. They're always intrigued about wanting to know more about another man. And at times, it even gets them confused to a level of their sexuality, because they don't understand where should I be, how should I act when it comes to this. And that things affects them a lot when it comes to now the teenage age. You find for boys, they would want to either explore more ladies to get that validation, or try to get a woman who's close to their mom. At times they might go to the other side. They also want to have interest in other men. So those are the things, some of the dynamics that I've observed that happen when it comes to kids who've been raised in such dysfunctional families.
Yeah. Monica, I'd love for you to jump into that. Like, what are the exact psychological impacts of such, whereby, you know, this lady hasn't been raised by a dad. They don't know how men should behave. They have this idea, probably their mom was telling them how bad their dad was, that's why they're no longer here. So they have this idea of men, and it's on the negative side. So just what are some of the psychological impacts on that?
Okay, thank you. We say that childhood years are very important years. They are the formative years. This is when you can instill either something positive or negative. And you find that most parents use this time to impart negative things to their children, especially when they are going through some kind of stress. So the child grows up in bitterness. And when this child translates now to marriage, now the girl wants to get married, there will be problems, because the girl will consider what the mother used to tell her, and this one will have an effect in their marriage. So you find that it is very important to take care of the formative years. Formative years, probably this is when a divorce occurs, probably this is when death occurs, and how did you take them through the loss and the loss and the grief process? You see, some children do not process, and therefore they may find it difficult to get married, fearing that if I get married, I might lose my spouse. So it is very important. Even when death comes in the family, how you take them through that process really determines their future adulthood.
Yeah. There's someone who had argued that the reason why we have so many, single parenthood households right now is because the parents that are there, say your parents, or my parents, when I'm in a relationship, it's official, I've gone in, I live with this man, and then maybe there are small things that are not sitting right with me. Then I tell my mom about it. My mom won't be, it's not like how it used to be back then where you're told, ngangana, mwanamke ni kulinda boma yake, and so on and so forth. Nowadays, your mom can easily tell you, kama anakusumbua wachana na yeye. Someone said that, put that as a reason. Would you say it's the case that nowadays we don't have, I don't know if the right word to use is mentors who are there with you to just let you know, okay, what is happening? Can we mend this? Can we just sit down and get to hear from both sides? So do you feel like it's the case as well?
Yeah, I think there's it's a valid argument, but I think also part of what misses from that conversation is when you meet them in their tail end of their lives, the regrets on having given up on something they would have resolved. Or maybe also, as it's been discussed, where there are no sort of like mentors who would tell you this is just normal. Because sometimes also you have very solitary people doing life on their own. And sometimes you need to go to meetings where you hear your wife from someone else's voice and you realize it's normal. Sometimes the things you argue about, the world has maybe World War III looming, then you're arguing about toothpaste and all that. That there are bigger issues in life than that. And maybe someone just needed to know it's not really about the toothpaste. Maybe the toothpaste was a trigger. Maybe she wants to feel listened to and stuff like that. Many times as men, we have been brought up not, our emotions have never been worked on to grow.
Yeah.
By the time you're saying you're empathetic, you basically have learned after very many mistakes, By the time, think of a scenario where we have situations where your wife or your girlfriend tells you something for you to fix, then you are told you are not supposed to fix, you're just supposed to be quiet and listen in and just allow. So I feel like while it's important to have those mentors, it's also important to say we need to, I don't know how to frame it though, but every relationship has issues and we just don't need to give up on each other because of the first. But also there's help out there. There's the other aspect around it that we may need a third voice to just say, by the way, we can navigate. If you talk to any person who's gone through life and maybe they're celebrating 30, 50 years in marriage, they will tell you there was a moment that they actually felt like they needed to give up. But it's also true that there are spaces where you need to run with your clothes on because if your life is being threatened, you've lost a tooth here and there. You'd rather be a single mother and alive with your child than stay in a relationship where perhaps death would have meant that it was going to come in a little earlier.
And sometimes, some say I'm staying for the child, when maybe you're in a violent situation, you're saying you're staying for the child and all you're doing is actually harming that child more because they are in a space where they're seeing violence every other time. So, well, I'm not advocating for people to leave their marriages, but sometimes when you have to, maybe you just have to. Let's speak about the stigma surrounding single parenthood households. And I think this one, I don't want to seem biased, but I feel like the single mothers they get hit hard by this more because when you say you're from a single mother home, there's a way someone will start judging you immediately that that's why you're even behaving the way you're behaving. Kids raised by their mothers alone are not very disciplined and whatnot. Let's speak around the stigma surrounding that.
Okay. If I want to speak about the stigma, in the earlier days, it was there. But nowadays you find that if a woman decides to leave her marriage, she's highly celebrated, even in social media. And it appears as if this thing is trending. So everybody is desiring to have that single parenthood because they are saying, this is a picture that I've posted when I was in marriage, this is after I left the marriage. And you find that people are really celebrating it. So it is appearing stylish or trending. On the other hand, during the old days, when we were being born, you find that if you are born of a single mother, you would prefer you are calling yourself by your brothers, by your mother's
name,
not by your mother's name, but her brother's surname.
Okay.
You could use it, so he may give the picture of a father or the father figure. Not like today, the boys are confidently calling themselves by their mother's names.
Yeah.
It seems as if now we have embraced this word as a society. During those days, it was the women were stigmatized. But nowadays, not so much. It's as if we are celebrating, we are happy about it. You leave your husband today, tomorrow you are on social media saying that I won't live such kind of life.
Yeah.
Where, in fact, they are even saying that I was married to a narcissist. So the husband is not a narcissist.
We have our first caller. So we have Richard from Busia. Richard, if you can hear me, good morning. And what's your question or comment? Hi, Richard. Hi, Richard. Can you hear me?
Yes. Habari zenu mimi wote.
Salama sana. Swali lako?
Yes. Naitwa Richard kutoka Busia. Yeah, Muhia is very well.
Okay.
Yes, mimi nikitaka kumaaga. Yes, mimi naona yenye inaendelea kwa sasa kwa familia we don't have the heart of forgiveness, and another we don't have to focus on our new next generation. We don't focus on our generation. Yes, and in the family, no one is perfect. So me, what I see, we can go back and forgive each other because no one is perfect in this world. Let us forgive each other and look at our future. Let us not see what we do today, but let us see outside the box.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you so much, Richard. Any one of you can jump on to what Richard is saying.
Yeah, I think Richard has a very important point that he's saying that nowadays people don't want to really put so much work into it. And I think like she was mentioning and talking about families breaking up and women calling men narcissists and stuff. It's because people don't really want to put in work.
Yeah.
Because I think we've always had that perspective that marriage should be a bed of roses. It should be fun. It should be enjoyable. But there's always that part that is hidden from everyone. That marriage is also ugly. Marriage needs a lot of work. Marriage needs a lot of commitment, communication, dedication, understanding, patience. So the moment you put all those factors, you find that some people are not willing to go that extra mile and maybe try and work things out. There's something, I think most men out here, most of us have been called narcissists.
Yeah.
It's something that is trending. I don't know. It's a Kenyan thing.
It's a trend, huh?
Yeah. Kenyans, we come up with words and start using them everywhere. So the moment you have a slight misunderstanding, or the moment a man stands his ground and says, this is the direction we are taking, you're labeled as a narcissist. So this is my advice, that people should be able to commit, and also before you conclude all these things, before you start labeling people and calling them terms as narcissists, make sure that you get professional advice. Maybe in a couple setup, maybe you think that the marriage is a bit toxic, try and get a counselor, go talk about it so that you can have a professional view when you're talking about it, instead of just labeling people. Yeah.
All right, there's another caller. We have Valencia from Kayole. Valencia, how are you? And what is your question or comment?
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is the most important topic of time. And being raised by a single parent is so hectic. It affects a lot emotionally, and especially in relationships. So, like for example, I am 24 years and I'm really having a challenge in my relationship because I was raised by a single mother. you know, at some point where you can just say like, this is my guy, let me just leave you and be happy because I can see I'm not making you happy. Sometimes they do things that you never thought you would do just because you have trauma, you know. So being raised by a single parent needs a mentor, maybe, because it's never easy. Sometimes you get yourself doing things because you feel you want to be loved by someone, but you remember your first love is your father, and it's a love that you have to get it first for you to get it from someone else. You know, so it becomes so difficult. Sometimes it's so bad. It's so bad. So for me, people who are raised by single parents, I think maybe if they're not there, they really need to have a mentor for them to have maybe emotional or mental stability. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for that. So for her, she's speaking almost from experience, you know, saying, you know, speaking of the gap that is always there, you know, for someone who's been raised by a single mom or a single dad, there's always a gap that needs to be filled, you know? Yeah. So the reality of that, and maybe just what can be done to try and change, you know, this whole scenario.
Okay, I could go at it. Let me say two things. As someone who's been raised by a single mother,
would you attest to the gap that is
yes,
there?
The gap is there.
Yeah.
But I want to say this, that there's a level at which you actually also reach a place and agree that Kimeniramba, you know, I'm in this, you know. Makosa ilifanyika.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't have spaces to even ask those questions. You can't ask your mom or your dad what happened between the two of you, you know. And sometimes maybe, you know, so there's that level where we must understand that maybe pain is inevitable, but suffering can be optional, where you start gleaning lessons and pick yourself up. Because there's a level at which also no one is coming to your rescue. And that's a reality to it, that you must also, even when you go for advice, you still have the option of picking the advice or not.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you must also gather yourself. There's a part of it where that the pain you've been entrusted with can actually help others around you, where you say, I made mistakes. Maybe I dated wrong because I didn't even know I had a gap. But now, this... part where you must also, because at the end of the day, there's a level at which, like people say, when you say I'm an orphan, maybe after age 12, there are people expect that you'll start taking a bit of steps around saying
12.
my situation is like
still
this.
Very young.
Yeah, I'm just saying what society looks at. But there's a level at which where saying I was raised by a single parent ceases being an excuse for either your misdemeanor, misbehavior, or
That's
your
true.
addiction and all that.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you're in addiction, you are the one either taking that drug or whatever. So there has to be a level where it's no longer about them. But also there's that understanding that you've been dispatched for a very unique purpose in society or in life. There are questions your life is supposed to answer in life that may be slightly different from what your parents were called to. Maybe your parents were just to play around Nairobi and all that, or Kenya, and you're called to have answers in other spaces. So because of that, I think there must be a journey where you're also saying, I am in this, but this can't be what then defines me.
My reality, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. And maybe just to you, Roba, you know, as he was saying, it needs to get to a point where you decide, okay, this is what has been happening, this is how I've been raised, yes, I have these traumas. Okay, let's take this caller and then we get back to that. We have a caller from Mombasa. Good morning.
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning.
You can go ahead and ask your question or make your comment.
Yeah, my comment is this.
Yes?
Yes, I'm Jacob. Let's come from Mombasa. Okay, mimi kwangu naonelea ile kitu inachangia sana ni watu kutoelewa, kila mtu anaelewa mwenzake nini unataka, nini sitaki. Maana ukijua nini nataka na mimi sitaki, tunaweza kusaidiana tukasolve issue. So on my friend anasema watu wakae wasikizane, ujue nataka hii na wewe utaki hili, ili tuweze kuendelea. Maana bila kuelewana nitafanya venye utaki na tutaendana kwa sana.
Hi. Thank you Jacob. Jacob anasema yeye watu waelewani tu. You know, hakuna cha mimi staki, mimi nataka, like, just sit down and agree on things. But as I was putting this question across to Europe, you know, from what he had said, there's also something you mentioned, that we have normalized the word narcissist and now it's like a term. I think it's time we also normalize the word therapy. True. You know, because, you know, for these wounds and these gaps that everyone feels, you know, if you're raised from a single parent household, and not just people who are raised from single parent households, we all have our traumas. Is it time for us to now take up that, you know, responsibility and decide, I think it's time for me to see a therapist, you know? As much as it's not very frequent that people will be open to go see a therapist, but things are changing now. Is it time to do that now?
Yes, and it's a good thing that we've now started talking about responsibility and accountability. Because the moment, now that we're talking about dysfunctional families,
yeah,
I think such problems, some of them can be avoided, you know, by simple things as people taking responsibility. Because I've seen nowadays people have so many things going on. Someone will tell you, I'm doing this because of my anxiety. Yes. You know, I'm doing this because of... But instead of taking responsibility, they're using those things as an excuse. Drug addiction, I'm doing this because I'm an alcoholic, you understand? So I think it's about time people start taking responsibility of their action. And also, people get to a point of self-realization. Always look at yourself, how you want to be, how your marriage you want to be, how you want your kids to be, and start being intentional in building that. Because there's no way that you would want a perfect family, yet you're not putting in work. Just like I said, marriage is about work, relationship is about work, and all this work comes with responsibility and accountability.
Yeah, so there's an article that was on the papers this morning, that's the Daily Nation. Actually, it was on the headline. It read, how jobs and pay crisis hits families. So families are obviously being hit hard by the economic times that we're in right now. I'm just imagining a single parent household. You need to work extra hard. So I'm imagining they have really less time with the children, you know. But before we get to that questions, so that you can be able to answer me on that, we have yet another caller. Can you hear me? Good morning.
Hello.
Hi.
Morning.
Kindly give us your comments or question.
My name is Napoleon.
Yes, Napoleon.
From Nambale here. My view is that dysfunctional family originates from how that family was brought up or maybe was initiated. You find that some of the families or children or maybe engagement start from what we refer as incest. So in an incest setup, a child will always miss one party. And maybe if some other party is initiated, that party will always also be stigmatized. So the entire family will live in a chaotic state with unique mental preparedness or maybe mentorship to that particular child. So however much we strive, you find that our social fabrics have been broken. That child will be told to go and stay with a grandmother who may not also be equipped with ideal skills to bring up that child. So that is a major challenge we have in Kenya, and I believe there's a way we need to come up together and fight it vigorously. Otherwise, single families will remain a bigger challenge in our communities and in our societies. That is my take.
So very much, Napoleon. And, you know, you can just, maybe either of you can pick from what he said. You know, I understand he was speaking about the impact it has. Kwa sababu umepata hapa, you've decided you're leaving your marriage. Now you maybe don't even have time to look after your child, so you're taking this child to the grandparents. So it affects the entire, you know, the entire system, really. Yeah, maybe you can jump onto that.
Yes, as you said, you had talked about the harsh economic crisis, where now a single parent is maybe required to move out, maybe probably out of the country to go and search for for a greener pasture.
Yeah.
And sometimes you find that we could be doing more harm than good. Maybe when we leave our children under the care of caregivers, maybe people who are not even our relatives, some are our relatives, maybe a boy is left to an uncle who is an addict. So the most likely thing the child will pick from this uncle is maybe alcoholism. You find that when you go to prisons, you find that so many people or so many boys who are there, they are called after their mothers. So you understand the issue now of single parenthood, that this child lacked a role model. There was no one to tell him that you are not doing the right thing, you are not going the right direction, and therefore you find that when you go there, I've been working in a rehab, and I find that so many boys who come there, they are coming from single parents.
Oh, really?
Yes. You find them calling themselves after their mother's names.
Yeah.
So you find that it has a lasting impact even in our entire society and the family system at large. So if you leave a child in a family where there is chaos, maybe there is this disorganization, people feelings are not validated, you find there is no boundaries. So the likelihood of this child going the opposite or the negative way, the chances are very high. So it is important as we raise our children. Even if we consider that we are undergoing harsh economic crisis, it is good to consider whether you are going out will be doing more harm than good to your children.
All right, let's take last caller. We have Paul from Buruburu. Paul, good morning, and what's your question or comment?
My name is Ndambuki. Ndambuki is not Paul. My name is Ndambuki.
Oh, sorry. Ndambuki, how are you?
Ndambuki Mudusi. And hii mada mnaongelea, I'm a victim of this hii tatizo nimenipata. Nimekuwa ndani ya hii tatizo for the last 35 years. Na Mungu amenisaidia akinifunulia kuhusu shida ndani ya familia. Haya matatizo mnayaona yana msingi mrefu sana. Ni chanzo kiko mbali mno. Hapo mnajadili, mnaanzia kukata mti, juu ya mti, kuliko kutazama mizizi iko wapi. Hii ni spirit. Na imeanzia familia za mbali mno, wazazi wa mbali mno, zinaendeleana kuzaliana. Kwa nini watu wakianzana kupendana wanakuwa wanapendana, wanaanza vizuri? Hii tatizo ndio waanze kufurugana, kujiuliza inatoka wapi? Kuna tatizo. Sasa kabla kujua hiyo tatizo chanzo yake, ni ngumu sana kupata majibu ya hii tatizo.
And according to you, Ndambuki, tatizo ni lipi specifically?
Tatizo ni kwamba shetani anapiga vita. Familia ni ya Mungu, mwanzilishi ya familia ni Mungu. Hii ni kanisa ya Mungu, inapigwa vita ni shetani. Upendo siwepo, maana shetani anajua mkiwa na upendo, mkiwa na umoja, kizazi cha Mungu kitaendelea vizuri, amani itakuwepo, mafanikio yatakuwepo. Kwa hivyo chanzo hii yote ni ushetani umekaribishwa ndani ya familia.
Okay. Alright, asante sana. Haya, ni ushetani, tuanzie hapo.
No, I have a friend who says Shetani was just chilling.
All of a sudden, boom, his name comes up in that conversation.
Yeah. I think we are not likely to run away from single parents being, whether men or women. It's just maybe we may just look at the coping mechanisms of how to reduce that.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is, if a man's financial fortunes reduce or disappear, there's a chance he will be left. There's a very high chance. Data shows that men are loved based on what they provide. It's very interesting. A lot of women will say they're independent women, but when you look at what they want in a man, they want a traditional man, a man who protects, who provides, who pays for all the bills.
And that's who a man is supposed to be, a provider, a protector.
Exactly. Every man wants to do that. But in family, there's teamwork. Someone can lose their job. No man has a permanent... Can you imagine when you realize that people don't love you for who you are? They love you because of what you can bring on the table. That changes even the dynamics. And that's why sometimes men can be a little rogue in the world, because then they know they're just being used. But having said that, Ndambuki says there are systemic issues that are not even discussed. There are kids who want answers in spaces where, and they can't even ask. We've had even scenarios where you find a boy being raised by a single mom, But the way the single mom is dressing and the boy is reaching puberty and all, it's going to mess up this boy. And the lady means well. Maybe she just doesn't know that, you know, this boy has grown and he sees the world through very different lenses. So we must reach a place where we have a conversation then as how do we then mitigate this? Think about this. We have a lot younger women now who will be attracted to older men. If they're going to get married to older men, the man will die. You'll be a single mother. There's a chance. Maybe they already know. Maybe it's a, we just need, I don't know. I'm just saying. Yeah,
You're
when
shouting.
you hear my mubaba, I'm shouting. My mubabas and all that. There's a chance you will be. So society is really, really, so we must reach a place where there's a candid conversation, but then how do we even mitigate and support? But at the same time, when you find yourself in this mix, we are also saying we take responsibility and say it doesn't have to then, let me put it this way in a sweeping statement, that you can come from a dysfunctional family, but a dysfunctional family doesn't
Must
have to
not
come
come
from
out of you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I want you to give your final remarks, and I think that was a good one. That's already your remark, right? So give us your final remarks in the very fewest of words.
Okay, I would encourage parents to embrace therapies, and especially for the high schoolers. You know, this is the time now these children are processing what happened, and maybe they have no one to ask. So the children will resort to maybe the issues of LGBTQ as a way of trying to compensate the pain. Necessarily, they don't do it for fun. Maybe the child is releasing some pain or is trying to process the trauma. The other thing is that you find that teachers are struggling with the children, sending them away from this school to another school, and probably we do not treat the problem. So the most important thing is try to look at the root cause. If it's a teacher, try to find out what is happening. If the child appears withdrawn, do we even care to know as teachers if our students went for holiday? When they come back, do any one of them lose their parents? You see? Was there violence in the family? These are some of the things that should be handled even in school, because a school may serve a safer space for the child to express him or herself.
True. All right. Thank you so much. Your final remarks, Robert?
My final remarks is that it's about time, especially for our generation, that people become so intentional and intentional, because if I to start with us, things the same way that our parents can't be doing things the same way that the society narrates. So if at all you want to start a family, you better be intentional of raising that child well in a good family setup, so that they can come up and become good kids. So the root of this starts with us being very intentional about having families. So family should be first priority. Leave alone job and everything. Family should be first priority.
I agree with you on that, and that is where we put a cap to today's conversation. Thank you so much to my panelists for joining me for this conversation. It was a good discussion, and you know, let's be intentional. You know, as Roba has said, let's be intentional. You know, let's just decide that, you know, we are intentional about how we are raising our children and all that, because families, as they say, is the backbone of a society. Families are the backbone of a nation. This is where we end it. My name is Vivian Ndegwa. Thank you so much for staying tuned. We do this each and every Monday, so be sure to catch us next week on Monday. This is where we end it. Until next time, do enjoy the rest of your viewing.